So earlier this week, I had a few people send me a link to this study that's been making its way around the internet and generating a lot of hype about the potential for Viagra to increase muscle mass by a lot. And basically, the paper showed that sildenafil, the medical term for Viagra, increases muscle protein synthesis and reduces muscle fatigue. In fact, the results were so impressive that it led the researchers to note that the approximate doubling of skeletal muscle protein synthesis from Viagra is similar to that observed with 100 to 200 milligrams of testosterone injection. Now, whenever I see a study making a big claim like this, my initial impulse is towards skepticism, and there were a few potential issues that caught my eye. The first being that this study only had 11 subjects, so 5 in the Viagra group and 6 in the placebo group. They didn't get any Viagra. And I was also a bit concerned that while these subjects were described as being healthy, in reality, they were quite overweight, with average body fat percentages sitting between 27 and 35%. But still, such a crazy spike in muscle protein synthesis seemed just too impressive to ignore. So I decided to get muscle protein researcher Jorn Trommelin on the line to see what the deal is. We should be good to go.
So what are you getting me in this time? Yeah, my mom is going to be real proud with this one.
As a protein researcher, what did you think of it? Were you impressed by the results?
I think this study got some attention for 2 reasons. One, just kind of funny, like dick pills working for muscle mass. The other one is that they write in the paper that the effects are comparable to testosterone injection. So of course everyone's going to be like, steroid-like gains, yeah. But actually it's less impressive than it sounds.
And Jorn went on to explain that maybe these results are a little less impressive than they appear on their face because you can actually see similar spikes in muscle protein synthesis just by taking in protein on its own.
But the question is, how long is the increase in muscle protein synthesis? So I mentioned that protein, of course, stimulates muscle protein synthesis and almost just as high as the Viagra did. But with protein, it's for like 2, 3, maybe 4 hours, and then it's back to basal again. With testosterone, it's for the entire week, it's sky high. So the question really is it for 1 hour or is it for the entire day? But of course, for just popping a pill, it's pretty amazing, especially if it synergizes with protein and exercise.
In fact, Jorn actually seemed to be a little bit more impressed with this study than I was. When I brought up a few of my concerns to him, like the small sample size, he didn't seem to be too worried.
So usually the problem with a small sample size is that statistics say, okay, this one group seems to be doing better, but I'm not going to make a statistical significant conclusion. In this study, the sample size is small, but despite the small sample size, there was a significant difference. So that's not really an issue. The other issue is that with 6 people, you'll always have the question, what if I take 6 other people? How comparable are the results going to be? In this study, they found that the Viagra was about twice as good as a placebo. If you do it again, it could be 75% better. So where the true effect lies, that's not really clear. But to me, it's pretty convincing that the Viagra was better.
But one thing that Jorn and I did agree on was the fact that the study measured mixed muscle protein synthesis, which might not be as applicable to bodybuilders as much as we'd like to think, and it's actually myofibrillar, or the synthesis of actual muscle fiber protein, that we really care about.
Well, for strength athletes, myofibrillar protein synthesis is clearly the superior option. And that's not necessarily what these authors were interested in, because for metabolic health, for example, mixed muscle protein synthesis is much more important because it includes things like mitochondria, which are also, again, important for endurance athletes. So it really depends on which population. The people who like this paper, like the strength guys, for them it's disappointing that they didn't measure muscle protein or myofibrillar muscle protein synthesis.
Now, they said it was a randomized double blind. I don't know exactly how well you could blind this. I mean, if you were one of the subjects receiving Viagra, don't you, assuming it works the way it's supposed to, you'd probably notice, you think, or no?
So, Mom, I know nothing about Viagra.
So I decided to check in with someone who has actually used Viagra to see if you could take it and not notice that you'd taken it.
Did we shut this door?
Yeah, we're talking about some adult material today.
This could be a silly question, but is there a way to direct the pump? I mean, like, do you ever get the pump where you don't want it in the gym?
That's what, I mean, the thing is, Viagra works it can be 30 minutes, it can be 90 minutes, depending on how much food you have in your stomach. But it happens like sometimes when you don't want it to happen. But I've never had it happen like in the gym or on stage, because we used to take it before we went on stage too, pumping up to just another, because you know how bodybuilders are. If I can just get a little bit more of a pump, I'll look crazy. That's how bodybuilders think.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. And while, as a researcher, Jorn honestly seemed pretty intrigued by this data set, John was a little less impressed. I asked him, as someone who's had experience with Viagra and testosterone, would you say that taking 25 milligrams of Viagra is comparable to a 200 milligram shot of testosterone? And this was his answer.
No, I don't think so. I mean, 200 milligram shot is... And I don't mind sharing this with people. The very first time I ever took testosterone, I took 250 milligrams every 10 days. And it was phenomenal. I got way bigger, way stronger. But like my experience with Viagra and Cialis is nothing like that. Not even close. The Cialis is great for pumps, but I wouldn't put it on the same planet as a testosterone injection.
But still, despite John's lack of enthusiasm about the boost in muscle protein synthesis, I think it's important to remember that this paper also showed reduced muscle fatigue. Subjects taking the Viagra were able to knock out about 150% more reps on a set of leg extensions, which again seems really impressive. We know that volume is a primary driver of hypertrophy, so if Viagra allows us to perform more total reps, that should definitely count for something. But with that said, before you add the little blue pill to your supplement stack, remember that, like many things, good effects can be coupled with bad effects. And just looking at the Viagra website, there's a pretty big list of side effects and disclaimers, so you'll want to be careful. And of course, remember that while this study does show some promise, I think that until future research comes out, I wouldn't let yourself get too excited. All right, so that's going to conclude it for this one, guys. I know it's a bit of a random topic, but I actually had a lot of fun making this video. But anyway, before we go, I want to give a huge shout out to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Skillshare is an online learning community for creators that I've been using lately to help improve the quality of my content, whether it be video editing or my photography for Instagram, as well as my actual business. I actually just finished watching the course Getting Started with Email Marketing, and I found it to be really helpful in getting my email list up and running on my website. So a Skillshare membership gives you access to more than 22,000 professional classes in photography, video editing, web development, business, and on and on. And a premium membership begins around $10 a month. But for the first 400 people to click the first link in the description box below, you're going to get a free 2-month trial of Skillshare. And apparently those spots tend to go pretty quickly. So make sure that you're one of the first 400 and get a head start on whatever skill it is you're looking to master. So thanks again, guys, for watching. Please leave me a like if you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe if you happen to be new, and I'll see you guys all here in the next video.